February this year, many thousands of developers will come to Fosdem, the big developers conference in Brussels, to meet and share their ideas. And one of them is Provem. He works for SUSE, the Linux operating system company, and is one of the speakers at the event. He will explain what went wrong with the development of today's computer architecture, what lessons we can learn from history and how to solve them. But first, what went wrong? Hi Liam.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What went wrong with today's computers?
It's a long story, and
Whoa.
It's rooted in research I've been doing over the last 5 or 6 years in the area of retro computing, which is a growing hobby of people who enjoy collecting and using vintage computers because they get a nostalgic feeling and more pleasure than the computers of today.
Okay.
I went digging into this area to look for some more unusual machines and architectures that other writers hadn't been writing about, and discovered the traces of a war that happened in computing some 30 years ago, which is almost completely forgotten today, and some very significant computer architectures, such as the Lisp machines, which are now almost completely forgotten, but which have very important lessons to teach us about the computers that it's likely we'll see in the next few years.
Okay, you say it was a sort of a war. That sounds serious.
Well, you know, no personal casualties, although a few computers bit the dust. But one little factoid that I uncovered that I rather like, the very first .com domain ever sold on the internet was to a company called Symbolics, and symbolics.com was the first ever .com domain ever used on the internet, as it started to spread from academia and the military into business. And Symbolics were the leading manufacturer of Lisp machines, and indeed their Lisp operating system, OpenGenera, can be run under an emulator on Linux today.
Okay.
Sadly, it's tied up with intellectual property rights, and you can't actually use it for any business.
But basically, you claim there's something fundamental wrong with the architecture, the computer architecture we use in our today's computers. Today's computer architecture, we see the processor, we see the memory, we see a hard disk, or we see a graphics card, and one operating system connecting this all. And you say that there is something which doesn't work really well.
I think that there are two primary things which have changed in the past and have been forgotten, but which are going to be relevant in the very near future.
Okay.
One, as you say, is the basic list of components. All computers today have the same core components, the absolute minimum that has been the case for almost all machines for 50 years or more. A processor, some memory, some dynamic storage, which can be accessed very quickly, but which loses its contents when the computer's turned off, and a hard disk or a disk drive of some kind, which keeps its information when the computer is turned off, but which is much slower to access. And that distinction, I think, is going to go away in the next few years as we have machines which have solid-state memory, on-chip memory, RAM, that doesn't lose its contents when the computer is turned off, which means that you simply don't need any kind of disk drive anymore, which means you don't need a file system, you don't need to do suspend and resume, you turn the computer off, and when you turn it on, it's exactly where it was. You don't need to install an operating system on it, because there's no disk to install it onto. It's booted off a network at the factory, and that operating system lives in memory for the rest of its life. Sure, you could reboot it and reinstall it if you need to, but there won't be a disk drive, there'll be no need for directories, files, program files and data files, and all the current problems with file formats.
Yeah.
All that is very soon, I think, likely to be just a historical curiosity for the ordinary desktop computers, tablets, phones that people use.
Yeah.
Not for servers, but this is going away, and we're not ready for that transition. The industry in general will have to confront this, I think,
Yeah.
and are almost completely unready. Nobody really believes in this. Hewlett Packard are one of the few companies to address it with a product called The Machine that they are working on.
Yeah.
But it's little more than some specs on paper at the moment.
Yeah.
However, there were machines in the past that worked like this. There is one remaining product in IBM's portfolio, these days called IBM I, which works in this manner.
Okay.
And people generally don't know anything about it. It's forgotten. It's been lost to history. And I think that if we dig this stuff up from the history of computing, a lot of time and effort could be saved by copying some of the ideas from the past rather than doing them all over again from scratch.
You say it is not too late yet. You're having your speech this weekend at the Fosdem. What are you hoping to achieve with this speech you're having?
I just would like to draw some attention to some forgotten and neglected ideas. I'm not really here to say, everybody is doing everything wrong and we need to throw it all away and start again. Mm-hmm. Software doesn't need to be this big. It doesn't need to be this complex. Yeah. We have to develop tools now, such as virtualization and containers, to divide up the complexity of modern software design into little manageable chunks. Yeah. So when something fails, it can be stopped and restarted without rebooting a whole computer. Yeah. It doesn't need to be that complicated. There are huge gains in programmer productivity if we can return maybe to a slightly simpler style of development, if we get away from some of the models that have ruled computers for many decades now. Yeah. And this new generation of non-volatile memory computers that are right on the horizon and are very likely to be on the market in a year or two.
Time for a clean break. Well, I hope you will have an excellent conference this weekend. I hope you will have a lot of discussions on this issue. And I hope we will be able to meet up again in perhaps a couple of weeks' time and to hear the outcome, or perhaps discuss new computer systems and new computer architectures in the future with you.
I would be absolutely delighted to do that.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for yours.